think that shift from becoming an observer to a questioner, I think that shift really transformed me. But it's the human impact. So something as simple as a decision being taken about an individual. Because I realized that it's people impact that translates into business, right? And there's so much more that the individual is also giving to a workplace. People don't struggle with work, but they struggle with how work makes them feel.
Clarity, communication, and a connection. Is
Yes,
that
brilliant.
what we are
The
trying
top
to
three
say?
C's. I'm here to serve the organization. I'm here for the larger purpose. Everything, tuck, 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 one after the other, you want to get done. And maybe just a new idea pops up, you never know. And then you want to add that to the list. Because, it's going to help your organization get there. If that hadn't happened, there would have been a lot of areas after that, and maybe I wouldn't be the leader I am today. With the years, what I've realized is it's also very important to have that sense of judgment.
Hello, I'm Shalini Gupta, and I'm really happy to once again bring over our The H Factor podcast, which means the human factor. Human factor, as in, bringing out the human side of professionals, leaders, opinion makers, and such important people around us. So today, I have a very important person who comes from the world of human resources. Jvaleen Kaur Sethi is a people and culture leader and the founder of Era One Advisors, where she works very closely with the founders and the leadership team in order to build a very, very high performing and deeply human organization. She has over 12 years of experience across various organizations, and she has been in very, very complex and fast paced environments. She has worked at the intersection of culture, leadership, and organizational design. She believes that culture is not built through policies, but through everyday leadership behavior, and helps companies translate that into how they hire, lead, and grow. Her focus today is on supporting Indian businesses scale with clarity, intention, and a strong human core. So, Jvaleen, welcome to our podcast, The H Factor or The Human Factor.
Thank you, Shalini, for having me here today.
Wonderful. And I'm seeing that you are now on your own, and after having spent a lot of time working at various organizations. So tell me, how did this entire, and when did you realize that you want to start something around human resource, or how did the Kira of human resource, come in?
I think early on, in the early days when I was a young woman starting off in her career, I think at that point I didn't have like a knowledge or a language, rather vocabulary for this, or what to coin it as. But I had this innate, very organic way and a very natural way of, entering a room and understanding like a sense of people, dynamics, the energy in that room.
Okay.
And I think at that point, I was more of an observer, so to speak. And over the years, with experience, with learnings, highs and lows, in the entire professional space, I then moved on to, I think, being the questioner. So there would be times when I would ask questions, and sometimes even those uncomfortable, difficult questions. And I think that was the role as HR as well, right? And there was even, there was a time when I was even known as, oh, you better watch out before you take her into a meeting because she always has a question, And I think that shift from becoming an observer to a questioner, I think that shift really transformed me. And that's when I realized, okay, this is a little more, it's more deeper. And I think it's not just work, but it's a lot more.
So I think that is very interesting because organizations are made of human beings. And as an HR person, I think the human side of the organization is very, very crucial. And you mentioned a very important point about observing. I think it's something that we rarely do as individuals. We just come to a conclusion very easily. We do not stop, we don't observe. So I think that's an interesting point from the world of human resource. But I just want to ask you, when you were younger, okay? So how did you pull this connection between the human in the organization and the culture? Is there something that helped you kind of, bridge that?
That gap, and to kind of figure that
Absolutely.
out. Yeah. I think I also realized that, it's not just a corporate function, it's not just policies or processes that it's all about, but it's the human impact. So, something as simple as a decision being taken about an individual, and I saw this very early on. A people decision can actually transform the way that person shows up, not just at work, but beyond work.
Okay.
So, I've seen that transformation in an individual. I won't mention the company or
Sure.
whom and all of that.
Absolutely. That's all right.
Yeah, but I really saw like the whole energy light up, in the environment in that room, and how that person got themselves to work and beyond work. From an introvert to an ambivert,
Okay.
and completely transformed themselves because they had clarity. They had consistency. They were a lot more capable and just a lot more competent and resilient beyond workplaces.
Okay. So that is interesting. Tell me, when did you really feel that this is my purpose and not my profession? Was there any such aha moment?
I think it was very similar to the one that I just
Okay.
mentioned.
Okay.
And because I realized that, okay, it's people impact
Ah.
that translates into business, right?
Right.
And there's so much more that the individual is also giving to a workplace,
Absolutely.
right?
I
It's a
think
two-way street from
it
that
is.
perspective.
It is. So
If you
true.
give them clarity, they're a lot more resilient, they're a lot more competent, they bring their best to the workplace, and whether we like it or not, we are spending a lot of hours for the
Yeah,
company, with the
absolutely.
company, with that environment, so it goes a long way.
Absolutely. So, while you have built a lot of fast paced and you've been in various complex scenarios, is there any interesting human insight? I mean, you of course touched upon it right now that it is a lot about, how you nurture them, how you observe them. But is there any insight that has surprised you?
Now, I think one of these that really stayed with me was people don't struggle with work, but they struggle with how work makes them feel.
Oh, that's interesting.
You
Can we
know?
know that a
Yeah.
little more?
So it's not just what that individual brings to the workplace, but it's also the other way. So,
Okay.
how the organization, say, for example, if you have an organization which is inconsistent,
Right.
or how leadership shows up,
Uh-huh.
or there's no clarity of the workplace or the role, there's a lot of friction,
Yes.
and
Confusion
a lot of
and,
confusion. Exactly. And then you have, say, something starkly opposite, right? Where everything's smooth. Of course, there are difficult conversations that will happen, but it's still better. There's more clarity, there's consistency. Leadership is aligned of how, what is spoken or what is agreed upon, what is actually done,
right.
right? That's a completely different ball game. So I think that's what matters, in terms of how you make the human side, which is everybody, whether it's the function or the environment or all the team members across, locations, how you make them feel connected,
Yeah.
and how you actually make them feel part of the organization.
So I think clarity, communication, and a connection is
Yes,
that
brilliant.
what
I
we are
think the
trying
top
to
three
say?
Cs.
Interesting, very nice. But we do realize that HR is not the very loved kind of a profession, right? Sometimes the employees wonder, should I talk about this to my HR? Should I share what I'm going through? So have you dealt with any such incident, where you like you rightly said, transformed with a little bit of a clarity or some kind of a communication, or maybe, nurturing a person or an employee?
I think over the years, I became very conscious of how I turn up as a leader,
Okay.
and in that context, I was very clear on this is how I don't want to be,
Okay.
and this is how I do want to be,
Uh-huh.
right? And then you learn a little from everyone along the way as well,
Yes.
plus situations, those
Absolutely.
uncomfortable question
Yeah.
situations, right? And that's when I realized that, okay, the way I actually turning up, I now stand for, and I've had my ex-team member tell me about it, that I actually stand for awareness, for empathy, and for responsibility.
Oh, that's very
So
nice.
I'm very clear because the reason why I'm here today is not because I'm here to, I'm the leader and they will listen to what I say, or, I don't have that mindset. I've never had it. It's more in terms of I'm here to serve the organization. I'm here for the larger purpose of Era One,
Okay.
right? So we're working together for that purpose, right? They decided to join me for a reason.
Very nice. So Era One is somewhat, I would say, it also covers a fractional, CHRO
yes.
and the various human resource
Yes.
functions. So would you say that it is kind of tough to balance the expectations and your leadership values in these organizations that you're consulting with?
I think it's not so much about balancing.
Mm-hmm.
When working with as a fractional CHRO with the founders in Indian SME firms. So I don't think it's as much about balancing, but my role is to create visibility.
Okay.
Okay, so founders, and I can relate to it because I'm a founder now, but there's always speed and there's velocity, and then you have this 5-year roadmap, right?
Yes.
And you have everything tuck, 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 one after the other, you want to
Yeah.
get done. And maybe just a new idea pops up, you never know. And then you
Sure.
want to add that to the list
Yeah.
because, it's going to help your organization get there.
Correct.
So they will keep doing that. You can't change them. That is what the founder does, right?
Yeah.
That's their role. So the role as a fractional CHRO then for us and for me is more in terms of translating or like creating visibility and awareness of translating those people impact into business impact.
Okay.
Right? And it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's more about just understanding what are the possible consequences that will show up because they will eventually.
Yeah.
And just to sort of like be aware of how to tackle it.
Okay.
So it's more about prepping and visibility and creating awareness for those situations for them.
And there have been tough situations, I'm sure.
Yes.
So you want to share with us a little because that's the core of what we want to create. Has there been any such tough situation or a tough moment or an emotional moment that you want to share, which is only for the purpose of if somebody can take something out of it? And it's like we are all one, right? We can all face that situation, and it is not just I am facing it or you have faced it or I have faced it. It's about what we may go through. So I'm just coming from that perspective.
Sure.
If you would like to share any such tough moment that you overcame and today you feel that can inspire somebody.
Okay. That was, the tough ones are really the emotional cord ones.
Yeah.
But I think I've unfortunately dealt with both sides. So there were situations where I was respected for the work I did, for me being me, and all that I gave to the organizations. And I think unfortunately there were times when I wasn't respected,
I'm
or
sure
the
there would have
respect
been.
was
Yeah.
not consistent. And I think that really hurts, and it hits quite hard.
Yes.
When you're in that space.
Yes.
Because I'm one of those I think I've always been one of those workaholics and work oriented people. And you think of the organization as your baby,
Yeah,
and you give it your all.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then to kind of,
We are there for more. I mean, we've been there for more than 10, 12 hours
yeah,
at times.
literally,
So, yeah.
yeah. You think of that space as your family, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah. So when you give your all in that moment and then that disconnect, I think that hits hard, when that happens. And while at that point, it can really hit you in to feel like, okay, what just happened here and why am I
Yeah.
dealing with this?
Yeah.
And all those emotions and that moment can come in. But I think now, I think at that time, it didn't feel as much. But now when I reflect, and I do a lot of that, so I've realized that was actually the turning point. That was my inflection point. And now I feel like it was important.
Yeah.
If that hadn't happened, there would have been a lot of areas after that, and maybe I wouldn't be the leader I am today.
Exactly.
So I mean, thank you for that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and I can smile about it and say
thank
it
you.
now.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you to the universe, whoever, the
Yes.
environment, but I think that also shaped me, to become the leader I am today. So, like I said, I'm very conscious about how I show up, and I've done a lot of, understanding of. I want to ensure and create organizations when I discuss, as a fractional CHRO or we do certain projects. I'm very clear on the kind of conversation or the way I want that organization to show up.
Right.
Because it's the
True.
softer aspects that are
Yeah.
so important and they go such a long way.
Absolutely, they do. And I think they are the ones which shape an organization for
Yes.
tomorrow. And I guess we all agree that tough bosses have trained us in a
Yes,
certain way.
definitely.
And they are the ones who've had a great contribution to what we are today.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you to them.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I think it is a good idea to thank them
Yeah.
on this podcast and openly. And you all know who you are.
Yeah.
Great. So, in today's world of, and since you have Era One as an advisory role for various organizations, are you also working with the startups? How is the startup culture? Are you seeing anything, very, very different as to how their founders are kind of looking at an organization building today?
So we've also been working with a lot of millennial startups.
Okay.
So, there has been that bit that we're working with and very different way of, modus operandi.
I'm sure.
But I think we've learned from the best of both. And then you have agreements, you have disagreements, but you manage your way through.
Yes.
Because they also understand that the kind of lens that you're bringing to the table,
Yeah.
And where you're coming from, not just in terms of experience, but also the kind of exposure you've had and where you're, referring to them,
Correct.
which aspect will have an impact. And I think the point that I mentioned of, we're able to think about the consequences before them happening.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of difference
So
for
you
them.
have to show them that entire picture
Yes.
of this can happen and
Exactly.
therefore you need to do this
Right.
today.
And even more so, I think most often those consequences always show up.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
do most of the
so
time.
most of the time. So it's just you're kind of prepared.
Absolutely.
So it's like a
And I
value
think
add for them.
Preparation is something that people are looking for consultants and advisors like you and your space. So, I think whoever is thinking of having an HR person on board and do not have an HR team, I think Era One is for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Very sweet.
Great. So any kind of a message that you would like to give to two kind of people. One is a young HR professional who's just starting his or her career. And second is somebody who's already in the mid path or somebody who's coming into HR. I have seen a lot of people, transition from other roles into HR.
Yes.
Some have taken business, marketing, and HR as a combo
Right.
together. So, any such message that you want to give?
I think I have two core messages for
Okay.
them. One is I think even I did it was very easy, when you start off to focus on those fancy titles and growth.
Yeah.
And the next big shiny little thing.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, I'm all for it. Ambition is good, but over the years, what I've realized is it's also very important to have that sense of judgment.
Okay.
When you have that sense of judgment to understand the kind of people you're dealing with, the environment that you're getting into.
Yeah.
So I think you need to ask yourself that question, not where am I getting at, but more in terms of who am I working with or which environment am I working with.
Okay.
Because the environment will shape you and will have an impact on you beyond your workspace.
Okay.
So I think that's one judgment, and the softer aspects are really critical.
Yeah.
I think the other is, as important it is to say, yes to everything, it's also important to say no.
To say no.
So you
That
need
is
to
so
know
true.
when to say no, how to say no, and
Yes.
at what context. So that's very important.
Oh, that's an important input. I'll just like to add one more thing. I don't know if it makes sense, but now is the time that we are talking, and by the time we kind of come out with this podcast is the appraisal time, and promotions, increments, all that happen. How important is that? Of course, salary is very important. We all have worked for it, the earning, but. I would like you to just add a little here about understanding your job profile vis-a-vis the promotion or the salary. Do you want to make any interesting comment there, especially for the youngsters?
Yeah. I think as long as you have clarity of thought of the role that you're performing, along with the ambition of where you want to get at,
Okay. Okay.
not necessarily maybe a broad career path.
Okay.
So to
like the
speak.
3-year.
Like a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. You just have an idea, not in terms
Do
of
people,
title.
I'm so sorry, but can I ask, do HR heads still ask about the 5-year plan? Because
No,
today
no.
is a very different
Not anymore.
scenario.
No,
Great.
not anymore.
So it's the 3-year
A 3-year
roadmap.
plan, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
but we don't really ask it. It's just something that I feel people should be mindful of.
Should be mindful of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it should not be based on a title. It can just be what kind of role you want to evolve into. into.
So the role is very important.
very
I think that's
critical,
what I
yeah.
really also wanted to hear, and
Yeah,
and
okay.
from somebody who's a professional, that it's not about the title, it is not about what you're earning, but the role that you have acquired and
Right.
your contribution of the role in the organization,
Yes.
which really makes your job very important. Absolutely, lovely. So we do have a rapid fire.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
I think, yeah, let's
All
dive in.
right. Okay, great. So, if work culture had a scent, what would your ideal culture smell like?
Oh, I think a mix of coffee, a
Oh,
sense of calm,
that's
and
nice.
difficult conversations, but done with respect.
Wow, that's nice. Coffee with calm. So, one people management hack you use that isn't in any HR textbook.
Always, always, always get done with the difficult conversation first. It's going to save you the drama later.
So important. And do not evade a conflict. Handle it there and then.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so true. So, what's a leadership red flag that you can spot within 10 seconds of meeting someone?
Okay, I don't believe in red flags. I will call it a pink
Okay.
flag.
Oh, pink flag. Oh, that's nice.
But
Okay. The pink flag.
yeah, I think the lack of self awareness on
Mm-hmm.
how they impact people.
Ah, that's interesting. Lack of self awareness of how am I appearing to someone.
Yes.
Ah. If you could design a culture for aliens landing on Earth, what's the first rule you'd try to do on set?
Wow. I think respect is not a reward, it's your baseline.
Ah, so
It's the
respect,
starting
respect, and
point. Yeah.
respect. Wherever you are, even on earth or otherwise, respect is something that you must always have. Lovely. Anything else you want to add, Javaleen, in terms of Era One that we have not discussed, but something that you're doing which is very useful in today's world?
I think we're working on a couple of areas, like you touched upon, in terms of executive search, people and culture design. We've also started a vertical called corporate communications.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
That's
it
nice.
actually helped. It evolved from one of the clients themselves,
Oh, nice.
not from the marketing standpoint, but more from the business standpoint,
That's
so
very
to
interesting
speak.
because one of our clients is not from the corpcom or the marketing side. They are the
Okay.
HR team who completely manages
Oh,
the entire corpcom and
wow.
the HR and the communications piece. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's interesting.
Yeah, and we've also recently done, we're also Belbin accredited,
Mm-hmm.
which is the certification tool
Okay.
where we're able to assess the situational adaptability of employees before they join.
That's
Or
very
if they're good to
interesting. Okay.
evolve into. We've had a lot of clients who've been in HR or not been in HR, like you mentioned, and want to get into HR or want to get
Okay.
into business. And that situational adaptability shows in terms of their strengths and even the areas, maybe not weaknesses, but areas of improvement,
Okay.
and how that evolves depending on environments, change of bosses.
Nice.
So that's
So
really
that's
helped
that's more
us.
like a tool, or is that more like a
It's a
questionnaire or a?
coaching. It's a
Oh,
coaching,
it's a
yeah.
coaching. Oh, all right. That's very interesting because I think the person that you have hired sometimes acts very differently later.
Yes.
So if you can get a little sense by some of these psychometric tests
Yeah.
or whatever you may call it,
Yeah.
or coaching,
Yes.
I think it might just help a little more.
Right.
Sure, that's an interesting
Yeah.
point.
I'd just like to add that it
Yeah.
also aligns with the employee's aspiration. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the
True.
tools don't, cover that
They only
aspect.
cover the organization,
Yes.
if I may say so.
They
We
do.
only see them talking about the vision, the
Yeah.
values, the goals that the organization wants to
Yes.
do. But they never ask the employee their aspirations.
Yes.
You're so true
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the human factor that we wanted to,
Yeah.
actually bring out and bring to you. And we are so happy to have, Jvaleen here, where she mentioned all about how human resource is about understanding the human side of the people in your organization. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Shalini, for having me.
Thank you.